My wife's brother demanded a $10,000 payment for his wedding, claiming I should give them that as a wedding gift. By not giving this money, I am spoiling their big day. On my refusal, my wife kicked me out of the wedding ceremony. After wedding, they saw all their belongings lying in the garbage outside the house. They all shock. My name's Marcus Lane, and if you'd told me 3 years ago that marriage meant becoming a walking, talking credit card for my in-laws' never-ending circus of catastrophes, I would have laughed in your face, bought myself a beer, and stayed single forever. But here we are, folks, living the dream. Or more accurately, living someone else's dream while I foot the bill and pretend to smile about it. When I married Tara, I genuinely thought I was getting the whole package deal. You know, a loving wife, a supportive family, maybe some decent holiday dinners where nobody asked me to refinance their bad decisions. I had visions of backyard barbecues, inside jokes, and that warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you're part of something bigger than yourself. Instead, what I actually joined was a financial cult, and let me tell you, the initiation fees were steep. The cult leader? Patricia Lane, my delightful mother-in-law, a woman who could guilt-trip a statue into opening its wallet. Her second-in-command and favorite disciple? Leo, Tara's younger brother and the family's so-called golden boy. Now, let me paint you a picture of Leo. This guy, and I use the term guy loosely because man-child feels more accurate, works part-time at a car dealership. Part-time. We're talking maybe 25 hours a week if he's feeling ambitious, which he usually isn't. But in his mind, and more importantly in Patricia's mind, this makes him a businessman, an entrepreneur, a captain of industry. I swear, the way they talk about him, you'd think he was running General Motors from his studio apartment that still has a futon as the primary furniture piece. Meanwhile, I'm over here with my boring finance job, my responsible 401k contributions, and my deeply offensive habit of paying bills on time. How shameful of me, right? How utterly pedestrian to have my life together and not constantly need bailouts like I'm a failing airline. The thing about Leo is that he's mastered the art of looking busy while accomplishing absolutely nothing. He's always got some deal cooking, some opportunity on the horizon, some connection that's going to make him rich any day now. Spoiler alert, none of it ever happens. But does that stop Patricia from bragging about her ambitious son at every family gathering? Hell no. If anything, his consistent failure only makes her more convinced that he's a misunderstood genius who just needs one more chance, one more loan, one more handout to finally make it big. And Tara, my loving wife, she bought into this narrative hook, line, and sinker long before I came into the picture. In her eyes, Leo can do no wrong. He's creative. He's a dreamer. He's finding himself. Meanwhile, I'm the boring husband who shows up to work every day, contributes to a retirement fund, and has the audacity to suggest that maybe, just maybe, a 32-year-old man should be able to support himself without his sister's husband bankrolling his lifestyle. Family gatherings with the Lanes were something else entirely. Picture this. Every Sunday, we'd all gather at Patricia's house for what she called family dinner. Sounds nice, right? Wrong. These weren't dinners. They were full-blown budget committee meetings disguised as social events. I'm talking about 3-hour marathons where everyone sat around debating, discussing, and ultimately deciding how to spend my money. It was like a low-budget version of the United Nations, except instead of world peace, we were negotiating who needed cash for what made up emergency this week. Patricia would sit at the head of the table like some kind of financial godfather, taking requests. Leo needs new tires for his car, she'd announce, as if this was breaking news that required immediate action. Tara would nod sympathetically. Her sister Jessica, yeah, there's a sister too, but she's usually smart enough to stay quiet, would make supportive noises. And then all eyes would turn to me, the family ATM, waiting for me to whip out my wallet and solve yet another preventable problem. Marcus can help with that. Can't you, Marcus? Patricia would say, and it wasn't really a question. It was a statement wrapped in a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The kind of smile that said, if you don't help, we'll make Thanksgiving very uncomfortable for you. And Leo? He'd sit there with this expectant look on his face, like I owed him something. Like the fact that I worked hard, saved money, and made responsible choices meant I was obligated to subsidize his collection of poor decisions. It's only $400, man, he'd say, as if only was doing any heavy lifting in that sentence. I'll pay you back next month. Next month never came, by the way. I'm still waiting on repayment for those temporary loans from 2 years ago. I'm thinking about declaring them as charitable donations on my taxes at this point. The worst part wasn't even the money, though. Don't get me wrong, watching your savings slowly drain into a black hole of entitlement definitely sucks. But the worst part was how they made me feel like the bad guy whenever I hesitated. Whenever I dared to suggest that maybe Leo should budget better, or that perhaps Patricia could cut back on her subscription boxes, or that Tara's cousin Brandon didn't actually need me to fund his business idea that was just cryptocurrency gambling with extra steps. The moment I showed even a hint of reluctance, I became the selfish one, the one who didn't understand family, the one who was good with money but bad with people. I started keeping a mental tally of all the ways they justified extracting cash from me. My personal favorite was investment in family relationships. That's what Patricia called it when she suggested I give Leo $500 for a networking event that turned out to be a weekend trip to Vegas with his buddies. An investment in relationships. I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. Tara would defend them every single time. Their family, Marcus, she'd say, like that explained everything. Like the word family was a magic password that unlocked unlimited access to my bank account. We help each other out. That's what families do. And sure, I get that. I'm not some Scrooge McDuck swimming in gold coins while my loved ones starve. But there's a difference between helping someone in genuine need and enabling a grown man's refusal to adult properly. But here's the thing nobody tells you about marrying into a family like this. You're not just marrying one person. You're marrying their mom, their brother, their sister, their cousin twice removed, and every financial crisis they'll manufacture for the next several decades. You're marrying into a system, and that system runs on guilt, manipulation, and the deeply held belief that your wallet exists for communal use. So yeah, that's my life. Marcus Lane, husband, finance professional, and apparently the family's personal Bank of America. And this story? This is about the day I finally closed that bank for good. So there I was, thinking life couldn't possibly get more expensive or ridiculous when Leo decided to get engaged. And not just engaged to Clarissa Montgomery, a woman whose entire personality could be summed up in one Instagram bio. Living my best life sparkles blessed folded hands future Mrs. Lane Ring. She was basically a walking, talking filter, the kind of person who'd never met a mirror she didn't immediately photograph herself in. Her sense of humor? Non-existent. I once made a joke about how expensive weddings were getting these days, and she stared at me like I'd just insulted her ancestors. Weddings are an investment in love, Marcus, she said, dead serious. Yeah, an investment that yields zero returns and maxes out your credit cards. But sure, Clarissa, let's go with that. When Leo announced the engagement at one of Patricia's infamous Sunday dinners, you would have thought the royal family had just announced a coronation. Patricia literally gasped, like hand over heart, dramatic soap opera gasp, and immediately started crying tears of joy. Tara squealed, so loud I'm pretty sure dogs 3 blocks away started barking. Jessica, the usually quiet sister, actually stood up and hugged Leo like he'd just returned from war instead of simply convincing someone to legally bind themselves to his nonsense. Even Tara's dad, Robert, who typically stays out of family drama by pretending to be deeply invested in whatever sport is on TV, looked up and nodded approvingly. It was like watching a cult react to their leader announcing the second coming. We're thinking a spring wedding, Leo announced, puffing his chest out like a peacock who'd just discovered how reflections work. Something elegant, classy, really memorable. Clarissa sat next to him, practically glowing with self-importance, already scrolling through her phone to show everyone her inspiration boards. And let me tell you, these weren't just regular Pinterest boards. These were full-blown architectural blueprints for the most extra wedding in human history. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, a live band and a DJ because apparently, one source of music isn't enough anymore. She had color-coded spreadsheets. Spreadsheets. For flowers. Patricia was already in full mother-of-the-groom mode, which meant she'd transformed from regular overbearing to turbocharged overbearing. We'll need to coordinate outfits, she declared, pulling out a notebook that she'd apparently been keeping ready for this exact moment. I'm thinking the family should all wear complementary colors. Maybe sage green or champagne. We need to look cohesive in photos. She said, cohesive, like we were planning a military operation instead of attending a wedding. I wanted to ask if we'd also be doing synchronized walking down the aisle, but I bit my tongue because Tara was giving me that look, the one that said, "Don't you dare ruin this moment with your sarcasm." Leo, meanwhile, kept using phrases like go big or go home, and you only get married once, as if these were profound philosophical statements instead of excuses to blow money he didn't have. This is our moment, he kept saying, and every time he said it, I wanted to remind him that moments don't typically cost more than a down payment on a house. But again, I valued my marriage enough to keep quiet. For now, the planning sessions started immediately. And by planning sessions, I mean mandatory family meetings where I was expected to sit quietly while everyone else decided how much of my money they'd be spending. Clarissa wanted chandeliers at the reception, not just one or two, but enough to make the venue look like a goddamn Phantom of the Opera set. Patricia insisted on custom matching suits for all the groomsmen because off the rack apparently wasn't good enough for her son's special day. Leo wanted to rent a vintage car for photos, book a videographer who charged more per hour than I made in a day, and have a destination bachelor party in Miami because memories are priceless, bro. I wanted to go home. Just straight up leave. Fake my own death. Join witness protection. Anything to escape this wedding planning tornado that had somehow become my problem despite the fact that I was neither the bride nor the groom. But the real kicker, the moment that made me question every life choice I'd made up until that point, came on a random Tuesday night. I was half asleep on the couch, watching some documentary about Antarctic penguins because that's what you do when you need to escape your reality. The penguins had their life figured out. Find a mate, huddle for warmth, eat some fish. Simple. Beautiful. No one was asking the penguins to drop 10 grand on someone else's party. Tara came in from the kitchen, sat down next to me with that casual tone that immediately put me on high alert. You know the tone. The one wives use when they're about to drop a bomb disguised as a reasonable request. Hey, babe, she started, and I already knew I wasn't going to like what came next. So, I was talking to Leo and Clarissa today. Of course she was. And they mentioned that everyone in the family is expected to give at least $10,000 as a wedding gift. It's tradition. I actually laughed. Like, full-on belly laugh. The kind of laugh that startled the cat and probably confused the penguins on TV. Tradition? I managed to get out between chuckles. What tradition? From which culture exactly? The Kingdom of Delusion? Is that a real place? Because I'd love to see the tourism brochures. Tara didn't find it funny. Her face did that thing where it goes from friendly to frozen in about 2 seconds flat. Don't be selfish, Marcus, she said, crossing her arms. It's his big day, our big day, as a family. She emphasized family, like it was supposed to activate some sleeper agent programming in my brain that would make me immediately reach for my checkbook. $10,000. I repeated slowly, just to make sure I'd heard correctly. $10,000. That's not a wedding gift, Tara. That's a used car. That's a vacation to Europe. That's 6 months of mortgage payments. Hell, that's almost a semester of college tuition. It's an investment in their future, she countered, and I swear she'd been practicing that line. It sounded too much like something Patricia would say. You know what else is an investment in the future? Our retirement fund, which, fun fact, isn't growing because we keep investing in Leo's present. I made air quotes around investing because I'm petty like that. She rolled her eyes so hard I'm surprised they didn't get stuck. You're being dramatic. Everyone's contributing. It's what families do, right? Because nothing says family bonding like mandatory financial contributions to someone else's overpriced party. I thought about bringing up the time Leo borrowed $50 from me to buy groceries and paid me back 3 months later with 2 expired movie tickets to a film I didn't even want to see. But I figured that would just start an argument, and I was too tired to fight. Plus, the penguins were doing something interesting, and I wanted to see how it ended. Spoiler alert, the penguins had better problem-solving skills than my in-laws. After Tara dropped the $10,000 bomb on me, life became a carefully orchestrated campaign of emotional warfare designed to separate me from my savings. I'm talking about a full-scale operation here, folks. If guilt tripping was an Olympic sport, my in-laws would have swept every medal category and probably set a few world records while they were at it. It started subtly at first, like most horrible things do. The next family dinner, because of course there was another family dinner. There's always another family dinner. Patricia spent the entire evening sighing. Not regular sighs, mind you. These were theatrical, deeply dramatic sighs that could have won her a Tony Award. She'd look at Leo, then at Clarissa, then she'd sigh like she was carrying the weight of 1,000 disappointed ancestors on her shoulders. It's such a beautiful thing, she'd say to no one in particular, when family comes together to support each other, when everyone contributes to making dreams come true. Then she'd look directly at me with those gilt laser eyes of hers, waiting for me to crack. I didn't crack. I just ate my mashed potatoes and pretended I was somewhere else. Anywhere else. Maybe back with the penguins. You know, Marcus, Patricia continued, because apparently my silence was permission to keep going. It's not really about the amount of money. It's never about the money. It's about the gesture. It's about showing you care. She said this while literally discussing amounts of money, which felt like a pretty significant contradiction, but pointing that out would have made me the bad guy. So I kept my mouth shut and my fork moving. Leo, sitting across from me with Clarissa attached to his arm like a designer handbag, decided to chime in with his signature blend of entitlement and absolute lack of self-awareness. Yeah, man, I mean, you're a finance guy, right? You work with money all day. You understand numbers. You can afford it. He said this so casually, like my job somehow meant my bank account was community property. Like because I knew how to read a spreadsheet, I was morally obligated to fund his fairy tale wedding. That's not really how money works, Leo, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. Just because someone works in finance doesn't mean they're swimming in cash like Scrooge McDuck. I have bills, responsibilities, this crazy thing called a budget. See, that's your problem right there, Leo said, pointing at me with a breadstick like it was a professor's pointer. You're too focused on budgets and restrictions. Sometimes you gotta live a little, bro. Take risks. Invest in experiences. I wanted to ask him how his last investment in experiences, the time he spent $3,000 on a timeshare presentation in Florida, $5,000 he definitely didn't have, which meant he was probably going into debt for someone else's wedding, which is insane. But somehow I was the crazy one for thinking this was all ridiculous. Dave's a good friend, Tara said pointedly. He understands loyalty. Dave's an idiot, I countered. And loyalty doesn't mean bankrupting yourself for someone's open bar. That didn't go over well. Tara gave me the cold shoulder for the rest of the evening, which honestly was kind of peaceful. At least when she wasn't talking to me, she wasn't guilt-tripping me. The pressure ramped up with each passing day. Patricia started calling me at work, to have little chats about family values and the importance of being there for each other. You know, Marcus, when Robert and I got married, both our families chipped in. She'd say, conveniently forgetting that chipped in back then meant maybe a few $100 and some homemade centerpieces, not a sum of money that could buy a decent used car. That's wonderful, Patricia, I'd say, trying to sound sincere while simultaneously trying to finish the quarterly report that was actually my job. But times are different now. Everything costs more. I have student loans, a mortgage, car payments. We all have expenses, dear, she'd interrupt sweetly. But family comes first. Always. I'm sure you can figure something out. Maybe take out a small loan, or dip into your savings. Just temporarily, of course. Just temporarily. Sure. Just like when Leo temporarily borrowed money 2 years ago, and it became permanently missing from my life. I'd learned that lesson already. Thanks. At home, Tara transformed into someone I barely recognized. She started treating me like I was the villain in a Hallmark Christmas movie. You know, the character who doesn't believe in the magic of the season and needs to learn a valuable lesson about what really matters. Except in this version, what really mattered was apparently me writing a check that would make my accountant weep. I got cold stares across the dinner table. Long, dramatic silences when I entered rooms. She'd sigh. She'd learned from Patricia, apparently, and make comments under her breath about people who don't understand what family means. She stopped laughing at my jokes, stopped engaging in our normal conversations, stopped doing pretty much anything that made our marriage feel like an actual partnership. One night, after another excruciating dinner where I was treated like a social pariah for the crime of financial responsibility, she hit me with the big one. Maybe you just don't understand family, Marcus. I looked at her, this woman I'd married and built a life with, and realized she genuinely believed that. She genuinely thought that because I wasn't willing to hand over $10,000 to her brother, a grown man who should have been capable of funding his own wedding, I somehow lacked the fundamental human capacity to understand familial bonds. I understand family just fine, Tara, I said calmly. What I don't understand is being treated like an ATM with feelings. She didn't respond, just turned away and went to bed, leaving me alone on the couch with my thoughts and the growing realization that this situation was about to get a whole lot worse before it got better. Wedding day arrived like an unwanted house guest who shows up 3 hours early and immediately starts criticizing your furniture. I woke up Saturday morning on my couch, where I'd been sleeping for the past 3 nights because apparently the bed belonged exclusively to Tara when she decided to grace our home with her presence, which wasn't often lately, and seriously contemplated every life choice that had led me to this moment. Part of me wanted to stay home. A big part, actually. Maybe the entire part. I could have spent the day doing literally anything else, organizing my sock drawer, watching paint dry, alphabetizing my spice rack. All of these activities sounded infinitely more appealing than watching Leo and Clarissa pledge their lives to each other in a ceremony that probably cost more than a semester at Harvard. But here's the thing about being the bigger person. It absolutely sucks, and nobody ever thanks you for it. But you do it anyway because you still have some shred of dignity left even when everyone around you has lost theirs completely. So I put on my suit, not the expensive one Tara had suggested I buy specifically for this occasion because we need to look our best, but my regular suit that I'd worn to approximately 47 other weddings and funerals and still looked perfectly fine. Thank you very much. I looked at myself in the mirror and gave myself a little pep talk. You can do this, Marcus, I said to my reflection. You're going to go to this wedding. You're going to be civil. You're going to prove you're the mature one. And then you're going to come home and never think about this again. My reflection looked skeptical, which was fair. The wedding was at some fancy venue outside the city, the kind of place that has a name like the Grand Estate at Willowbrook and charges you $50 just to park in their lot. I arrived fashionably late. Not on purpose, I just couldn't find the place because apparently Google Maps has a vendetta against me, and immediately regretted not staying home. The parking lot was full of luxury cars that probably cost more than my annual salary. Mercedes, BMWs, even a Tesla or two. I pulled my perfectly serviceable Toyota Camry into a spot between a Range Rover and what I'm pretty sure was a Maserati, and felt my car judging me for the company it was forced to keep. The venue itself looked like something out of a magazine spread about how the other half lives. There were white roses everywhere, and I mean everywhere. On the columns, lining the walkways, arranged in massive displays that probably required an entire greenhouse worth of flowers. String lights hung from every available surface, creating this soft glow that would have been romantic if I wasn't mentally calculating how much each strand cost. A string quartet played classical music near the entrance, because apparently recorded music wasn't classy enough for Leo and Clarissa's big day. I walked in and immediately spotted Patricia holding court near the entrance, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my first car and a hat that looked like it had been borrowed from the royal wedding collection. She was surrounded by relatives I barely recognized, all of them cooing over the decorations like they'd personally achieved world peace instead of just overspending on someone else's party. "Marcus," she called out when she spotted me, her voice carrying that special tone that meant she was being polite in public but absolutely planning to lecture me later in private. "So glad you could make it. We were starting to wonder if you'd show up." Translation: we were hoping you'd stay home so we wouldn't have to deal with your presence dampening our perfect day. Wouldn't miss it for the world. I lied smoothly, plastering on my best fake smile. "Where's Tara?" Patricia's expression flickered for just a second, there and gone, but I caught it. Disapproval mixed with disappointment, her specialty combo. "She's with the bridal party, of course. She said she'd meet you inside." Then she leaned in closer, dropping her voice to that conspiratorial whisper she used when she wanted to guilt-trip someone without witnesses. "I hope you've reconsidered your position on the gift situation, Marcus. It's not too late to do the right thing." The right thing. As if bankrupting myself for her son's overpriced party was some kind of moral imperative. "We'll see," I said noncommittally, and excused myself before she could launch into another lecture about family values and the importance of generosity. I made my way into the main ceremony space, and holy hell, it was even more ridiculous than I'd imagined. Remember those chandeliers Clarissa wanted? She got them. All of them. The entire ceiling was covered in crystal chandeliers that sparkled like a disco ball had exploded and rained down expensive shrapnel. The chairs were covered in white fabric with elaborate bows. There were ice sculptures, plural, strategically placed around the room, currently in the shape of swans, but probably melting into abstract blobs in the late spring heat. A massive flower arch stood at the altar, so covered in roses and peonies and whatever other expensive flowers they'd imported that you could barely see the actual structure underneath. I found a seat toward the back, which was perfect because it gave me an easy exit route when this whole thing inevitably became unbearable. I nodded politely at the other guests, none of whom I really knew. They were probably Clarissa's family and friends, people who thought this level of extravagance was normal, who probably had trust funds and summer homes, and didn't understand why anyone would balk at dropping 10 grand on a wedding gift. The ceremony itself was a ceremony. Leo stood at the altar looking like he'd won the lottery, which I guess in his mind he had. He'd found someone willing to marry him and convinced both families to fund his dream wedding. Clarissa floated down the aisle in a dress that probably cost more than my car, looking like she'd stepped directly out of a bridal magazine. All perfectly arranged curls and practiced smile. Tara was one of the bridesmaids, wearing a sage green dress that Patricia had undoubtedly coordinated, and she didn't even glance in my direction. Not once. Not even when she walked right past my row. The officiant droned on about love and commitment and partnership, and I tried not to think about the irony of hearing a speech about partnership while sitting alone because my actual partner was giving me the silent treatment for refusing to fund her brother's lifestyle. After the ceremony, which felt like it lasted approximately 17 hours, but was probably only 30 minutes. Everyone moved to the reception area, which was somehow even more elaborate than the ceremony space. The chocolate fountain Clarissa had wanted? Check. The live band? Check. The elaborate centerpieces that probably cost more per table than most people spend on groceries in a month? Check, check, and check. I grabbed a drink from the bar. Might as well get something out of this experience, and was contemplating how soon I could leave without causing a scene when I spotted Leo heading straight toward me. He had that look on his face, that particular combination of smugness and entitlement that I'd come to know so well over the years. He was still in his tuxedo, which fit him surprisingly well considering his usual fashion sense involved cargo shorts and graphic tees. "Hey, Marcus," he said, strutting up to me like a peacock who'd just discovered mirrors. His hair was slicked back with what must have been an entire container of gel, and he smelled like he'd bathed in cologne. "Glad you made it after all." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, taking a sip of my drink. "Whiskey." I was definitely going to need whiskey to get through this conversation. He glanced around, probably checking to make sure we had an audience. Leo loved an audience, then looked back at me with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "So, about that check?" And there it was. The man had literally just gotten married approximately 45 minutes ago, and his first priority at his own reception was hitting up his brother-in-law for cash. Not thanking guests for coming, not dancing with his new wife, not enjoying any moment of his special day. Nope. Money first, everything else second. I smiled, the kind of smile that probably should have warned him to back off, but Leo had never been great at reading social cues. "Oh, I didn't forget," I said, my voice perfectly pleasant. "I framed it for you, actually. Hung it right next to the word entitlement in the dictionary. You should check it out sometime. Really inspirational stuff." His face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, realization, then anger. "What?" he sputtered. "Are you serious right now?" "Dead serious," I confirmed. "You know what else is serious? A grown man expecting his sister's husband to fund his wedding. That's pretty serious. Seriously delusional, but still serious." Before Leo could formulate a response, and I could see him struggling, his brain clearly short-circuiting, trying to figure out how to be offended and demanding at the same time. Tara appeared like a storm cloud in sage green. She must have been watching us from across the room, waiting for the confrontation she knew was coming. "Marcus, we talked about this," she hissed, grabbing my arm hard enough to leave marks. Her face was flushed, whether from anger or embarrassment or both, I couldn't tell. "Yeah," I said calmly, pulling my arm free. "And I said no. Pretty clearly, if I remember correctly. Multiple times, actually. In several different ways. I even used small words in case there was any confusion. Then you can leave, she said, her voice cold enough to freeze the champagne. If you can't support my family, if you can't do this one thing, then you can just leave. The entire reception area had gone quiet. Or maybe it hadn't, and I just couldn't hear anything over the ringing in my ears. People were definitely staring, though. I could feel dozens of eyes on us, watching the drama unfold like we were the entertainment portion of the evening. And you know what? Fine. If they wanted a show, I'd give them a show. I set down my drink, straightened my tie, and turned to address the room at large. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent reception hall. Thank you all for coming to celebrate Leo and Clarissa's special day. I hope you're enjoying the decorations, the food, the ambience, all of which cost approximately the same as a small car. I paused for effect. I'd love to stay and celebrate with you all, but apparently my invitation came with a financial obligation that I wasn't aware of. So I'll be leaving now. I gave a little bow, because if you're going to make an exit, you might as well commit to it, and looked directly at Leo. Enjoy the free food, everyone. It's the last thing associated with this family that I'll ever pay for. Then I turned and walked out, leaving behind the stunned silence, the scandalized gasps, and probably any chance of my marriage surviving the night. But you know what? As I walked out of that overpriced venue, past those ridiculous ice sculptures and excessive flower arrangements, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Free. Word count, 1,200 words exactly. Walking out of that wedding venue felt like breaking out of prison, except instead of scaling walls and dodging searchlights, I just had to navigate past a bunch of overdressed people clutching champagne glasses and judging me with their eyes. I could feel their stares burning into my back as I made my way through the reception area, past the elaborate centerpieces and the stupid chocolate fountain that was probably gurgling away without a care in the world. Someone gasped. I think it was Patricia, but honestly, it could have been any one of the dozen relatives who'd been waiting for me to crack under pressure. Well, congratulations, everyone. You finally got your drama. The parking lot was still full of those fancy cars, but mine, my beautiful, reliable, reasonably priced Toyota Camry, looked like freedom on four wheels. I unlocked it, slid into the driver's seat, and just sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, breathing in the quiet. No guilt trips. No passive-aggressive comments. No one demanding money, I didn't owe them. Just me, my car, and the open road ahead. I started the engine and pulled out of that parking lot like I was escaping a natural disaster, which, let's be honest, wasn't far from the truth. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the venue getting smaller and smaller, all those twinkling lights and excessive decorations fading into the distance. Good riddance. I hope they enjoyed their ice sculptures before they melted into expensive puddles of regret. The weird thing about finally standing up for yourself after months of being treated like a walking ATM is that it doesn't feel bad. Like at all. I'd expected guilt, maybe some regret, possibly that sinking feeling you get when you know you've burned a bridge. But instead, I felt lighter. Like I'd been carrying around a backpack full of rocks labeled family obligations and unreasonable expectations, and someone had finally told me I could put it down. I drove for a while, not really heading anywhere specific, just enjoying the sensation of being completely and utterly free from that toxic circus. The radio was playing some classic rock station, and I cranked it up, singing along badly to songs I hadn't heard since college. When was the last time I'd done this? Just driven around, windows down, music loud, without worrying about who needed what from me or how much my next family contribution was going to cost. Eventually, my stomach reminded me that I'd been too stressed to eat anything at the reception, not that I would have touched their overpriced catering anyway. I spotted a pizza place, one of those local joints that's been around forever and has exactly zero interest in being trendy or Instagrammable. Perfect. I pulled into the parking lot, went inside, and ordered a large pepperoni with extra cheese, because if I was celebrating my newfound freedom, I was going to do it properly. Rough day? The guy behind the counter asked. He was maybe 20, with a name tag that said Danny, and the kind of laid-back demeanor that suggested he'd seen it all and wasn't impressed by any of it. You could say that, I replied, loosening my tie. Just walked out of a wedding. Your own? He asked, raising an eyebrow. God, no. My brother-in-law's. Or I guess he's still technically my brother-in-law. We'll see how long that lasts after tonight. Danny grinned. Drama at weddings, man. Classic. One time this couple had a huge fight during the vows because the groom forgot to memorize his part and tried to wing it. The bride literally walked out mid-ceremony. That sounds amazing, I said, and I meant it. At least that bride had the sense to bail before signing legal documents. How long until my pizza's ready? 15 minutes, he said, handing me a receipt. Want to wait in your car? I'll bring it out. I thanked him and headed back to my Camry, which was still sitting in the parking lot like a loyal friend waiting patiently. I sat in the driver's seat with the windows down, breathing in the evening air and feeling more relaxed than I had in months. My phone was buzzing in my pocket. Probably Tara, probably Patricia, definitely someone who wanted to yell at me about my unacceptable behavior, but I ignored it. They could wait. They'd gotten really good at making me wait for things. Now it was their turn. Danny brought out the pizza exactly 15 minutes later, and I tipped him extra because good service deserves recognition and also because I was in an exceptionally generous mood now that I wasn't being pressured to donate thousands of dollars to someone else's ego trip. The pizza smelled incredible: grease, cheese, pepperoni, all the things that make life worth living. I opened the box right there in the parking lot and took a bite, and I swear it was the best pizza I'd ever tasted. Maybe it was actually good, or maybe freedom just makes everything taste better. Either way, I sat there eating pizza in my car like a man who'd just been released from emotional prison, and it was glorious. A couple of other cars pulled into the lot. Families, teenagers, people just going about their normal Saturday evening without any wedding drama or financial ultimatums. I watched them and felt this weird sense of envy mixed with relief. They looked so uncomplicated, so unburdened. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I could be like that too. I could just exist without constantly worrying about someone else's problems or needs or manufactured crises. I finished my second slice and pulled out my phone, fully prepared to see approximately 800 angry messages. I wasn't wrong. Tara had called 6 times. Patricia had texted me a novel about family disappointment and burning bridges. Leo had sent me a series of increasingly aggressive messages that basically boiled down to him calling me every name in the book while simultaneously proving he didn't actually know that many names. Jessica, surprisingly, had sent one message. That was intense. You okay? At least one person in that family had some sense. But you know what? I didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. Instead, I sat there with my pizza, watching the sun set and thinking about my next move. Because here's the thing about finally standing up to toxic people. Once you do it once, you realize you can keep doing it. You realize that their guilt trips only work if you let them work. Their manipulation only succeeds if you participate. And then an idea hit me. A beautiful, petty, absolutely perfect idea that made me smile for the first time all day. A real smile. Not one of those fake ones I'd been plastering on for months to keep the peace. I pulled up my contacts and scrolled until I found what I was looking for: Tony's Moving Company. I'd used them when Tara and I first moved into our house, and they'd been efficient, professional, and remarkably non-judgmental about the amount of stuff we were hauling. I hit dial. A woman answered on the third ring. Tony's Moving. This is Sandra. How can I help you? Hey Sandra, I said, feeling that smile get wider. My name's Marcus Lane, and I need some help with a quick cleanup project. Are you guys available this evening? This evening. She sounded surprised, which was fair. Most people don't call moving companies at 6 o'clock on a Saturday night. Well, we've got a crew finishing up a job right now. They could probably swing by in a couple hours. What kind of cleanup are we talking about? Just some items that need to be relocated, I said vaguely. Shouldn't take more than an hour or two. I'm willing to pay overtime rates, of course. I could hear papers shuffling on her end. Okay, Mr. Lane, I think we can make that work. What's the address? I gave her my home address and confirmed the time. She said they'd be there around 8:30, which was perfect. That gave me time to finish my pizza, drive home, and prepare for what was about to become the most satisfying evening of my entire marriage. Great, Sanders said. And just to confirm, you need items removed and relocated. Where are we taking them? I thought about that for a second. Where indeed? Then it hit me. The curb, I said. Just relocate everything to the curb. Nice and neat. Very organized. There was a pause. The curb? You mean like for trash pickup? Exactly like that, I confirmed. Think of it as aggressive decluttering. Sandra laughed. A genuine, surprised laugh that suggested she'd heard a lot of weird requests in her time, but this one was definitely making the highlight reel. All right, Mr. Lane. We'll see you at 8:30. This should be interesting. Sandra, I said, you have no idea. I hung up, finished my pizza, and started driving home with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in ages. The evening sun was painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the kind of sunset that makes you think maybe everything's going to be okay after all. My phone kept buzzing with messages, but I didn't care. Let them stew. Let them panic. Let them wonder what I was going to do next. Because for the first time in our entire relationship, I wasn't playing by their rules anymore. I was making my own. And oh, it was going to be beautiful. I got home around 7:30, which gave me just enough time to walk through the house and take inventory of exactly what needed to go. And let me tell you, there was a lot. Over the months, hell, over the years, my house had slowly transformed into a storage facility for the Lane family's excess garbage. I'm talking about Patricia's collection of decorative pillows that she temporarily stored in my guest room when she redecorated her living room 2 years ago. Leo's golf clubs that he'd left here after deciding golf was too boring, and he wanted to take up tennis instead, which lasted approximately 3 weeks before he moved on to his next hobby. Clarissa's wedding planning binders, all 17 of them, stacked in my home office because apparently her apartment didn't have enough space for her organizational obsession. There were boxes of Christmas decorations that belonged to Tara's family, stored in my garage since last January because Patricia's storage unit was too full. There was Leo's collection of vintage movie posters that were really just regular posters he'd bought at a garage sale and convinced himself were worth money. There were clothes, shoes, random kitchen appliances that didn't work but were too good to throw away, and about 47 reusable shopping bags that no one ever actually reused. My house had become a dumping ground, and I'd been too busy playing the role of supportive husband and good family member to notice or complain. Well, not anymore. Tonight was spring cleaning on steroids, and I was feeling motivated. I started with the guest room, pulling out those decorative pillows that Patricia loved so much. The ones with inspirational quotes like live, laugh, love, and family is everything that now felt like they were personally mocking me. I hauled them downstairs and set them by the front door. Then came Leo's golf clubs, his tennis racket, his basketball that had been deflating in my closet for 6 months, and a box of his old college textbooks that he swore he was going to sell but never did. The movers arrived right on schedule at 8:30. There were 3 of them. Tony himself, a broad-shouldered guy with a beard that would make a lumberjack jealous, plus 2 younger guys who looked like they lifted weights for fun. They pulled up in their truck, took one look at the pile of stuff I'd assembled by my front door, and Tony let out a low whistle. "So," he said, climbing out of the truck and surveying the scene. "Sandra said something about aggressive decluttering?" "That's exactly right," I confirmed, shaking his hand. "Everything you see here needs to be relocated to the curb. Neatly arranged, nothing damaged or thrown around. I want it to look intentional." Tony grinned. "Intentional garbage. I like it. This your stuff or someone else's?" "Let's call it community property that's being redistributed," I said diplomatically. One of the younger guys, his name tag said Mike, laughed. "Dude, did you just kick your roommate out or something?" "Something like that," I agreed, but more dramatic and with better reasons. They got to work, and I have to hand it to them. They were professionals. They didn't ask unnecessary questions, didn't judge my life choices, just methodically moved everything from inside my house to outside my house with impressive efficiency. I showed them where everything was, and they hauled it all out. The decorative pillows, the sports equipment, the wedding planning binders, the boxes of decorations, even that weird sculpture that Leo had made in a pottery class and insisted I display somewhere prominent in my home. "This is actually kind of therapeutic to watch," I told Tony as they carried out the 17th box of miscellaneous Lane family belongings. "Oh, I bet," he said, wiping his forehead. "We get called for jobs like this more often than you'd think. Last month, we helped this lady move all her ex-boyfriend's stuff to a storage unit after he forgot to pay rent for 6 months. She was singing while we worked." "I can see why," I said, watching Mike and the other guy, whose name I learned was Derek, carefully arrange everything on the curb in neat, organized piles. They worked like artists, creating a display that was impossible to miss and equally impossible to misinterpret. By 9:30, the job was done. My house felt lighter, bigger, like someone had removed a physical weight from the foundation. The curb, on the other hand, looked like a yard sale had exploded, except everything was free and came with a side of dramatic statement-making. I paid Tony and the crew, tipped them generously because good work deserves recognition, and they drove off into the night, probably heading home to tell their families about the weird guy who paid them overtime to arrange garbage artistically on his lawn. Then I went inside, grabbed a cold soda from the fridge, and waited. I didn't have to wait long. Around 10:15, I heard cars pulling up outside. Multiple cars. I looked out the window and saw Patricia's SUV, Leo's sedan, and a vehicle I didn't recognize. Probably someone who'd offered to drive Tara home since she'd refused to ride with me to the wedding. They were probably all still in their wedding clothes, probably still buzzing with that post-ceremony high, probably still convinced that I was the villain in their story and they were the wronged heroes. They were about to get a reality check delivered directly to their curb. I heard the car doors opening, then silence. Complete, absolute silence that stretched for what felt like minutes, but was probably only seconds. Then Patricia screamed, and I mean screamed, like she'd just witnessed a murder scene instead of her decorative pillows sitting neatly on my lawn. "What is this?" she shrieked, her voice carrying through the closed windows and probably alerting every neighbor within a 3-block radius that something interesting was happening at the Lane residence. I took a sip of my soda, walked to the front door, opened it, and leaned casually against the doorframe like I was surveying a job well done. Which, let's be honest, I was. Leo was standing in the middle of the yard, staring at his golf clubs with the kind of expression usually reserved for discovering your house has burned down. "My stuff," he whispered, bending down to pick up one of his vintage movie posters. "Marcus, this is my stuff." "Yeah," I said conversationally. "It is. Or was. Now it's trash. Funny how that works." Tara had dropped her bouquet, which had probably cost $300 because everything at that wedding cost $300 minimum, and was staring at me like I'd grown horns. "Marcus, what have you done?" I took another sip of my soda, savoring the moment. "Oh, I just did what you all did at the wedding, took out the trash. Figured if I was getting kicked out of family events for not funding everyone's lifestyle, I might as well reclaim my house while I'm at it." Patricia's face had gone from pale to red to almost purple. "You can't, this is my things." She gestured wildly at the pile, her hat from the wedding now sitting crooked on her head, which would have been funny if the whole situation wasn't already comedy gold. "Your things that you've been storing in my house for the past 2 years rent-free," I corrected pleasantly. "I finally got around to cleaning out the storage space." "You're welcome." Clarissa, because of course she'd come along, probably planning to gloat about the successful wedding, pulled out her phone and started recording. "This is insane," she muttered. "Absolutely insane. Everyone needs to see this." "Please do record it," I encouraged. "Make sure you get the part where I'm standing in the doorway of the house I pay for, having removed items that belong to people who've spent months treating me like their personal bank." Leo's shock was transforming into anger. I could see it happening in real time, his face getting redder, his fists clenching. "You can't do this," he shouted, pointing at me accusingly. I'm going to sue you." I raised an eyebrow. "Sue me for what exactly?" "Cleaning my own house. Removing property that was being stored without my permission? Please, Leo, explain to me what law I've broken." "I'll wait." He sputtered, clearly not having thought that far ahead. You're destroying our property." "I haven't destroyed anything," I said calmly, gesturing to the neatly arranged piles. "Everything's intact. Organized, even. The movers were very careful. Your golf clubs are fine. Patricia's pillows are perfectly fluffy. Hell, I even made sure your Rolex was on top where you could easily see it." Leo looked down and spotted his watch, the one he'd bought on credit and bragged about for 6 months, sitting on top of a cardboard box. He grabbed it like it was a life preserver, clutching it to his chest. "Buddy," I continued, pushing off from the doorframe and walking down the steps, "I pay the mortgage on this house. I pay the utilities. I pay for literally everything. And you know what? The trash pickup is scheduled for Tuesday morning, bright and early. So if you want your stuff, I'd suggest you start loading it into your car. Otherwise, the city's going to take care of it for you." "You're welcome." You could have heard a pin drop. Even the neighborhood dogs, who usually barked at everything, had gone silent. A few neighbors had come out onto their porches, drawn by Patricia's scream and the general commotion. Mrs. Chun from next door was watching with unconcealed interest, probably filing away every detail to share at her book club. Tara finally found her voice. "You've lost your mind," she said quietly. "You've actually lost your mind." "No," I corrected, meeting her eyes. "I finally found it." The next morning, I woke up in my own bed, not the couch, not the guest room, but my actual bed, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Complete, blissful, uninterrupted peace. No one was guilt-tripping me over breakfast. No one was dropping hints about family obligations. No one was treating my bank account like it was community property. Just me, my coffee, and the beautiful sound of absolutely nothing. I made myself a proper breakfast. Eggs, bacon, toast, the whole deal, and ate it at my own kitchen table without someone suggesting I should have bought organic eggs or criticizing my cooking technique. I scrolled through my phone while I ate, and that's when I discovered that last night's curb display had officially gone viral. Clarissa had posted first, of course. She'd uploaded her video from last night with a caption that was peak Clarissa, a tragic selfie featuring her perfect makeup somehow still intact despite the trauma of witnessing garbage, accompanied by the most passive-aggressive caption in social media history. Some people don't know how to support love. When family shows you who they really are, believe them. Broken heart crying face hashtag wedding drama hashtag toxic family hashtag blessed anyway. I nearly spit out my coffee laughing. The video had already racked up thousands of views and hundreds of comments. Most of them were from people who had no idea what actually happened, just jumping in with their hot takes based on 30 seconds of footage showing me standing calmly in my doorway while Patricia screamed about her decorative pillows. But the real gem was Leo's post. He'd gone full victim mode, posting a picture of his golf clubs sitting on the curb, which actually looked kind of artistic in the morning light, if I'm being honest, with a caption that read, "Fake family will always reveal themselves when money is involved. You think you know someone, then they show their true colors." All I wanted was his support on the biggest day of my life. But I guess some people value their bank accounts more than relationships. Hashtag family betrayal hashtag true colors hashtag disappointed but not surprised. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Here was Leo, who'd literally demanded $10,000 from me, posting about how I valued money over relationships. The cognitive dissonance was strong with this one. I couldn't help myself. I really couldn't. My fingers were typing a comment before my brain could intervene with something reasonable like, "Don't engage," or "Be the bigger person." Screw being the bigger person. I'd been the bigger person for months, and look where it got me. Under Leo's post, I commented, "Exactly. That's why I kept mine in the bank." Simple, direct, devastating. I hit post and watched as the comment immediately started getting likes. Within 5 minutes, it had more engagement than Leo's original post. People were responding with laughing emojis, fire emojis, and comments like "OOP," and he said what he said, and Marcus woke up and chose violence. Leo deleted the entire post within 10 minutes. Just gone. Vanished into the internet void like it never existed. But the internet never forgets, and someone had already screenshot both his post and my comment, which was now circulating on Twitter with the caption, "Brother-in-law absolutely destroys entitled groom" in comment section. Clarissa's post stayed up longer. She was apparently more committed to her victim narrative, but eventually disappeared too after the comments section turned into a debate about wedding gift etiquette and whether demanding specific amounts was tacky. Spoiler alert, most people thought it was extremely tacky. My phone started blowing up with messages, but this time they weren't all from angry Lane family members. Tara's friends were texting me. People I barely knew, women she'd gone to college with or met at yoga or worked with at various jobs over the years. And here's the interesting thing, they were divided. Half of them thought I was Satan incarnate. Sarah, Tara's friend from work, sent me a long message about how family is everything, and you should have just helped out, and it's only money. Only money. Sure, Sarah. Why don't you Venmo me 10 grand if it's only money? I'll wait. But the other half? They were firmly Team Marcus. Tara's college roommate, Jessica. Not to be confused with Tara's sister, Jessica, because apparently every woman in this story needed a J name, sent me a message that simply said, "Finally, someone had the balls to stand up to that family." Tara's been enabling Leo for years. Good for you. Another friend, Monica, who I'd always thought hated me based on the way she looked at me at parties, sent, "Dude, I've been waiting for someone to call out their BS for literal years. That family treats everyone like an ATM. You're my hero." Even some guys from my own friend circle, guys who'd met Leo at various gatherings and immediately disliked him, were sending me congratulatory texts like I'd won a sporting event. Saw the video, my buddy Jake texted. Legendary move with the curb display. Chef's kiss man. Mancook kiss mark. My coworker David sent an email, because David was old school like that, with the subject line, respect, and a message that read, "Heard about the wedding situation through the grapevine. Just wanted to say I respect the hell out of what you did. Too many people let family walk all over them. You drew a line. That takes guts." But the best messages came from people who'd had similar experiences with toxic family members. It said, "World's okayest husband" on it, which felt appropriate given the circumstances. She stared at me like she expected more. An apology, maybe, or a breakdown, or some desperate plea for her to stay. When I just continued drinking my coffee, she shook her head. "You've changed, Marcus." "Nope," I corrected. "I just stopped changing to accommodate everyone else." She left without another word, and honestly, the house felt better immediately. Lighter. Like someone had opened all the windows and let fresh air in after months of staleness. I spent the rest of the day doing absolutely nothing productive, and it was glorious. I watched TV shows Tara always said were stupid. I ordered Chinese food for lunch and pizza for dinner because I could eat whatever I wanted without someone commenting on my nutritional choices. I left my socks on the floor. I drank beer straight from the bottle. I played video games until 2 in the morning like I was back in college. And the remote control? The TV remote that had been a constant source of negotiation and compromise? It was mine. All mine. I didn't have to watch home renovation shows or reality TV or any of those true crime documentaries that made Tara paranoid about home invasions. I watched sports. I watched action movies. I watched that dumb comedy special I'd been wanting to see for months. This was freedom. This was what peace felt like. My buddy Jake called around 9 that evening. "Dude, you doing okay?" Saw all the social media stuff. "Better than okay," I told him honestly. "I'm great, actually." "Yeah." He sounded skeptical. "Your wife just moved out, and her whole family thinks you're the devil. You sure you're good?" "Jake, I'm at home, in my underwear, eating pizza, watching whatever I want on TV, and nobody is asking me for money. This is the best I've felt in years." He laughed. "Fair enough, man. Fair enough. Hey, some of us are grabbing beers Wednesday if you want to join." No judgment, no drama, just guys being idiots. "I'll be there," I said, and I meant it. When was the last time I'd gone out with my own friends without having to clear it with Tara first, without her making comments about how I was abandoning her for guy time? After I hung up, I looked around my house, my actual house, not the Lane family storage facility it had become, and smiled. Sure, my marriage was probably heading for divorce court. Sure, half of Tara's family and friends thought I was a terrible person. Sure, I'd probably just created enough drama to fuel family gossip for the next decade. But you know what? For the first time in a long time, I was genuinely, completely, unquestionably happy. And that was worth more than any wedding gift could ever be. 3 weeks passed, and let me tell you, watching karma work its magic from a comfortable distance is better than any Netflix series ever made. I'm talking about premium entertainment, folks. The kind of schadenfreude that makes you feel just a tiny bit guilty for enjoying it so much, but not guilty enough to actually stop watching. The first domino fell exactly 9 days after the wedding. I know the exact timeline because Leo posted about it. Of course he posted about it. The man couldn't take a breath without documenting it on social media. His post read, "Sometimes life throws you curveballs when you least expect it. Facing unexpected challenges, but staying positive. Everything happens for a reason. Folded hands, flexed biceps, hashtag stay strong, hashtag new beginnings." Translation, he got fired. I found out the actual details from Tara's sister Jessica, the sister, not the college roommate, who apparently felt bad about the whole situation and decided to fill me in during a surprise coffee shop encounter. I was grabbing my usual morning coffee when I literally bumped into her in line. Awkward doesn't begin to cover it. "Marcus," she said, looking genuinely uncomfortable. "Hey, Jessica." I nodded, trying to figure out if I should make small talk or just grab my coffee and run. She glanced around like she was checking for surveillance cameras, then leaned in. Look, I know everything's been crazy, but I thought you should know. Leo got fired from the dealership. I tried to look surprised instead of absolutely delighted. Really? What happened? He kept calling out. She explained, lowering her voice even though nobody around us cared about our conversation. He took like 2 weeks off before the wedding to focus on wedding preparations, then the week of the wedding itself, then called in sick for 3 days after because he was exhausted from the stress. His manager finally had enough and let him go. Wow, I said, and I genuinely meant it. Leo had managed to get himself fired from a part-time job at a car dealership, not exactly a position requiring rocket science or brain surgery, by taking too much time off to plan a wedding he couldn't afford. The irony was so beautiful it almost brought tears to my eyes. Yeah, Jessica continued, looking actually sympathetic. And Clarissa's not working either. She quit her job before the wedding because she wanted to focus on being a wife. She made air quotes around that last part, which told me everything I needed to know about Jessica's opinion on that decision. So they're both unemployed, I said slowly, processing this information like it was the best news I'd heard all month. Which it was. Completely. And get this, they blew through most of their wedding money on the honeymoon. They went to Bora Bora for 10 days. 10 days, Marcus. Do you know how much that costs? I did know, actually, because I was a finance guy who understood concepts like budgeting and living within your means. But I let her continue. Now they're broke, living in Leo's apartment that he can barely afford, and Clarissa's been posting these passive-aggressive motivational quotes about toxic family members and staying positive during hard times. Jessica rolled her eyes. It's a whole mess. I thanked her for the information, got my coffee, and walked back to my car feeling lighter than air. Was I a bad person for enjoying their misfortune? Maybe. Did I care? Not even a little bit. They'd spent months making me feel guilty for not funding their fantasy lifestyle. Now reality was sending them the bill, and apparently, reality didn't accept IOUs. Clarissa's social media had indeed become a gold mine of unintentional comedy. Every day brought a new motivational quote, each one more passive-aggressive than the last. Sometimes the people you take a bullet for are the ones behind the trigger. Broken heart hashtag betrayed hashtag fake family. Or my personal favorite. When people show you their true colors, don't try to repaint them. Hashtag lesson learned hashtag moving forward hashtag blessed. The comments section was always entertaining. Her friends would leave supportive messages like, "You're so strong," and "Their loss, babe." Meanwhile, random internet strangers who'd seen the original wedding drama posts would drop in with comments like, "Maybe don't demand 10K from people," or "This you," with screenshots of her deleted posts. She'd block them, of course, but more would pop up. The internet is forever, Clarissa. That's rule number one. Patricia tried calling me approximately 47 times during those 3 weeks. I know because I never deleted her voicemails. I kept them as evidence in case I ever needed to prove I wasn't crazy, that this family really was as exhausting as I claimed. Each voicemail was a masterpiece of manipulation, starting with fake concern and escalating to barely concealed anger. "Marcus, honey, it's Patricia. I think we should have a family discussion about everything that's happened. Give me a call when you have a chance. Love you." That was week 1, still trying the friendly approach. By week 2, "Marcus, it's Patricia again. I really think we need to talk about your behavior at the wedding. A lot of people are concerned about you. Please call me back." Week 3, "Marcus, this is getting ridiculous. You need to answer your phone. We're family, and families talk things through. Call me immediately." I didn't call. Instead, during one of her attempts, I actually answered, which surprised her so much she went silent for a solid 3 seconds. "Marcus," she finally said, recovering. "Oh, thank goodness. We really need to have a family discussion about." "Patricia," I interrupted calmly. "If you want to discuss anything with me, email my accountant. I'll forward you his contact information." "Your accountant?" "Marcus, don't be ridiculous. We're family. We don't need accountants to." "Exactly," I said cheerfully. "You're family, not clients. Which means you definitely need to go through proper channels for any financial discussions. Have a great day, Patricia." I hung up before she could respond, blocked her number, and went back to eating my sandwich in peace. My accountant, Bob, who I'd briefed on the situation because Bob was a good guy who appreciated a quality drama, thought it was hilarious, and told me to forward any emails directly to his spam folder. But the real highlight of those 3 weeks came on a random Tuesday afternoon. I was working from home, actually focused on a quarterly report that was due by end of day, when I heard a knock on my door. Not my doorbell, a knock, soft and hesitant, like whoever was on the other side wasn't sure they wanted to be there. I opened the door, and there was Tara, my wife, the woman who'd spent the last 3 weeks living with her mother and sending me occasional texts about needing space and reevaluating our marriage. She looked tired, like genuinely exhausted, not Instagram filter tired. Her hair was in a messy ponytail. She was wearing sweatpants instead of her usual coordinated outfits, and she was carrying 2 bags of groceries. "Hey," she said quietly. "Hey," I replied, leaning against the doorframe, not blocking her entry, but not exactly inviting her in either. She shifted the grocery bags. "Can I come in? I brought food. Thought maybe we could talk." I stepped aside, curious more than anything else. She came in, walked to the kitchen like she'd never left, and started unpacking the groceries. Bread, eggs, milk, some vegetables, chicken breast. Normal food. Not the organic, expensive stuff she usually insisted on, just regular grocery store items. "Things have been hard," she started, not looking at me. "At Mom's." "I'm sure," I said neutrally, hopping up to sit on the counter. She finally turned to face me, and I saw something I hadn't seen in months: uncertainty. Tara had always been confident, sure of herself and her decisions. But this Tara looked lost. "Marcus," she sighed, her shoulders slumping. "You embarrassed us. At the wedding. Throwing everything on the curb. The social media comments. You made us look bad." I smiled, couldn't help it. "No, honey. I educated you." She blinked. "What?" "I educated you," I repeated, sliding off the counter. "About boundaries. About respect. About the fact that I'm not your family's personal piggy bank. You needed to learn that lesson, and apparently, a curb full of decorative pillows was the only way to teach it." She stared at me for a long moment, then looked away. "Leo lost his job. I heard. And Clarissa's not working. Also heard. They're struggling. Really struggling. And she's been a lot to deal with. Living with her again is like being in high school, except worse because now she's got opinions about my marriage falling apart." "Your marriage isn't falling apart," I corrected. "Your marriage is being recalibrated. Big difference." Tara bit her lip, and I could see her working up to something. Finally, she asked the question I'd been waiting for, the one that was so predictable I'd actually rehearsed my response. "Can we move back in? Until we figure things out." There it was. The woman who'd kicked me out of her brother's wedding for not giving him $10,000 was now asking if she could move back into the house I paid for. The universe had a sense of humor after all. I raised an eyebrow, let the silence stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable, then smiled. "Sure, as long as you don't mind the guest room. That's where I keep all the trash bags now." Tara did move back in, but let me be crystal clear about something. This wasn't some heartwarming reunion where music swells and everyone hugs and learns valuable lessons about love conquering all. This was a business arrangement disguised as a marriage trying to find its footing again. And honestly, that was exactly what we needed. The guest room comment wasn't entirely a joke. I'd converted that space into my home office/personal sanctuary during her 3-week absence, complete with a desk, my gaming setup, and yes, cleaning supplies strategically stored in the closet as a reminder that I wasn't running a storage facility anymore. Tara got the message loud and clear when she saw it. Things were different now, and different was non-negotiable. We sat down that first night she was back. Really sat down. No TV, no phones. Just 2 people who'd legally bound themselves together having an actual conversation for the first time in months. She looked uncomfortable the entire time, perched on the edge of the couch like she might need to make a quick escape. So, I started, cracking open a beer because if we were doing this, I was doing it with alcohol. "Let's establish some ground rules." She nodded slowly. The fact that she wasn't immediately arguing or making excuses was already progress. "First," I continued, "your family's financial emergencies are not my emergencies. Not anymore. Leo needs money. He can get a job. Patricia needs storage space. She can rent a unit like a normal person. Someone has a crisis. There are these wonderful things called savings accounts and credit unions." "Marcus, I'm not finished," I said, holding up a hand. Second, this house is not a storage facility for Lane family overflow. Anything that's been here more than a month without being used gets donated or tossed. Your choice which, but it's gone either way. She opened her mouth, closed it, then nodded again. Third, and this is the big one, you don't get to guilt trip me for having boundaries. You don't get to make me feel selfish for refusing unreasonable requests. You don't get to weaponize the word family every time someone wants something from my wallet. Are we clear? Tara was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten, she said softly. Living at Mom's these past few weeks, watching how she treats Leo, how she enables him. I saw it clearly for the first time. It's like she's running a puppet show and we're all just dancing on strings. Welcome to the revelation, I said, taking a sip of my beer. Population, currently just you and me, but I'm hoping the numbers grow. She almost smiled at that. Almost. Leo's been calling me nonstop. Him and Clarissa both. They need money for rent, for groceries, for their car payment. Every day it's something new. And Mom keeps saying we should help them. That family takes care of family. And She trailed off, shaking her head. I finally told her no. I actually said no to my mother. Do you know how hard that was? I have some idea, I said dryly. She didn't talk to me for 2 days. 2 entire days of silent treatment because I wouldn't give Leo money we don't even have. Tara laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. And you know what I realized? It felt good. Saying no felt really good. That's when I knew we might actually make it. Not because she'd come crawling back, not because she'd admitted I was right, though that was certainly satisfying, but because she'd finally seen what I'd been trying to tell her for years. The Lane family wasn't a support system. It was a black hole that consumed everything in its orbit. The next few months were interesting, to say the least. Leo stopped calling me entirely, which was a blessing. He avoided me at the few family gatherings I agreed to attend. And yes, I did eventually go to some, but only the mandatory ones like Thanksgiving and Christmas. And even then, I had an exit strategy planned before I walked through the door. Clarissa's Instagram became less passive-aggressive and more desperately aspirational. The motivational quotes about toxic family members got replaced with posts about hustle culture and building your empire from the ground up. Last I checked, her empire consisted of selling essential oils on Facebook, which was about as surprising as finding out water is wet. Patricia toned down her lectures significantly after Tara had a come-to-Jesus conversation with her about boundaries and respect. I wasn't present for that conversation. Tara insisted on doing it alone, but apparently, it involved words like enabling and emotional manipulation and ended with Patricia crying and claiming nobody appreciated everything she'd sacrificed for her family. Classic Patricia, making someone else's boundary setting about her own victimhood. But here's the thing, she backed off. Not completely. Patricia would probably die before she completely backed off, but enough that family dinners became tolerable instead of torture sessions. She stopped asking me for money. Stopped making pointed comments about my priorities. Stopped sighing dramatically every time someone mentioned Leo's name. Leo himself eventually found another job, this time at a gym selling memberships. He was terrible at it, according to Jessica, but at least he was employed. Clarissa got a part-time gig at a boutique, which she documented extensively on social media, like she was the first person in history to work retail. They moved to a cheaper apartment, downgraded their cars, and generally learned what the rest of us already knew. Life is expensive when you're not mooching off other people. Did they ever apologize? Hell no. That would require self-awareness and humility, 2 qualities the Lane family seemed genetically incapable of possessing. But they stopped asking me for money, stopped treating me like their personal ATM, and that was honestly better than any apology could have been. As for that $10,000 I didn't spend on their wedding, I invested it. Boring, responsible, incredibly satisfying investing. Split it between my retirement fund and an index fund that was already showing solid returns. Every time I checked my portfolio and saw that number growing, I thought about what it could have bought. Leo's open bar, Clarissa's ice sculptures, some overpriced centerpieces that would have been thrown away the next day. Instead, it was buying me something infinitely more valuable, financial security and peace of mind. The return on that investment? Absolutely priceless. My relationship with Tara improved too, slowly but steadily. It turned out that when you're not constantly fighting about her family's financial demands, you actually have time to remember why you married each other in the first place. We started going on dates again, real dates, not family dinners disguised as social obligations. We talked about our future, our goals, our plans that didn't involve funding someone else's dreams. She even started standing up to her family on her own, which was attractive in a way I hadn't expected. Watching her tell Leo no when he asked for just a small loan to cover his gym membership, that was better than any romantic gesture. Seeing her roll her eyes when Patricia started one of her guilt trip speeches, chef's kiss. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled things, if I wish I'd been more diplomatic, more understanding, more willing to compromise. And my answer is always the same. Hell no. Not even a little bit. That wedding fiasco was the best thing that ever happened to my marriage, to my finances, and to my mental health. I learned that boundaries aren't mean, they're mandatory. That family doesn't mean unlimited access to your resources. That no is a complete sentence and doesn't require a PowerPoint presentation to justify it. And most importantly, I learned that the people who truly love you won't make their affection conditional on your bank account balance. These days, when people ask why I didn't attend Leo's next big event, he tried throwing a one-year anniversary party and expected everyone to chip in for the venue, because apparently, he learned nothing. I just grin and give them my standard response. Because I only invest in things that grow, like my savings account and my patience, not their nonsense. And you know what? That answer gets better every single time I use it.